And like it's such an interesting genre mashup. I know that when we kind of first watched it, we sort of said it's kind of like, you know, Breaking Bad meets The Sixth Sense, and everyone was like, that sounds really cool, but what does that look like? Like, what does that mean? Like, how did you come up? It's such an interesting idea, it's such an interesting plot. Like, where did that inspiration come from, as far as how to come up with the script?
Years ago, I actually did a project. It was a film. It was like creating your own adventure movie, and I traveled all over Canada interviewing kids that lived on the streets. It was for Crime Prevention Canada, and I met all these kids that had been involved in gang-related activity, or their families had, or their parents had, and it was just so crazy to hear how these good people kind of got sucked into the world of crime. And a lot of it was because they just didn't know how to fight back, and they didn't know how to, deal with, people coming at them. It's like the manipulation of it all. And it was just, I thought about it so much afterwards. And we did this whole movie, and we actually flew kids from all over Canada into Guelph, Ontario, and we worked with them as actors to actually create this project to kind of keep kids out of gangs and stuff. But it just affected me so much that I thought about it so much, and then eventually came up with this idea about, this family that, is kind of going through a similar situation. But we also make horror movies, so I mean, we've got our own twist on it. But.
Awesome. And one of the things, and I think we need another round of applause for this for sure as well, is that how good of a performance is this movie? Like when I watched it, I was just like, holy, like this is crazy. Like this is like, and I just felt like all that, like it's like a family that kind of you meet when you get introduced to them in the movie, and then Jess, like you come in as Jackie, and you kind of become part of that family. How did you guys like interact on that on set? Like how, I don't know who wants to answer this question, but how did you become that tight? Because on the screen you actually look like your father-daughter, and then somebody else that's come into that family.
Well, the advantage of working actually on a farm, in the middle of nowhere, with a really small cast and small crew, you're doing everything together. Yeah. You're eating together. You're changing together. You're always around each other. And actually, Abe and I stayed in a cottage in Aurelia together too. So it was, it just happened naturally. It really wasn't. It's by virtue of being super isolated. Yeah. And they're pretty cool, so we got along.
Yeah. I think you said it all.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And we just want to give a shout out to Ari Millen too, who is couldn't be here tonight, but he's actually acting and producing Chad's new project that he's working on too with director Cody Callahan. So the next Black Fawn film. Not supposed to say the name of it, okay? So it's this big secret, but you guys should just hear about something early next week, okay? So keep your ears down to the ground for that. But let's give a big shout out to Ari, because he's just absolutely crazy bad in this movie as a villain. He's so good. And how is it working with him on set, with him not being in character and then him being in character during those scenes? How crazy was it? Because he's not a good guy in this movie. We always talk about William being a good guy that has to do bad things, but Ari is not, right? So
he was a great guy. I mean, like Joe said, we all had a ton of fun. But yeah, he was always so nice. So it was just kind of crazy when when we started rolling, that he just was so wicked. And was like, how is this possible? Because he's such a nice person. It's crazy. Yeah.
That was not my experience at all. I mean, I think he may be a method actor or something like that, because he was always like that on the set with me until we went to the screening, the cast and crew screening, and then I met this other guy who was really cool and fun and nice. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? So I think maybe he stayed in character for me, and he was out of character for you. But I got the other guy. I got the crazy guy. How you doing, Ari? I'm fine. How are you, Aiden? dude, I'm okay, man, I'm sorry I'm bothering you, you know what I mean? Anyway, that was my experience, but I've heard that he's a wonderful guy, and I choose to believe that.
Yeah, we're actually working with Ari right now on this new feature, and it's something that was actually a Fringe Festival play that got turned into a screenplay that it won a couple of years ago, 2013, the Fringe Festival in Toronto. So we just started filming it. We filmed a couple days in February. We filmed the last 3 days last week, and we're just switching over a set right now. So I'm just coming from set right now and a little exhausted and out of it. But, and then next week we start shooting another 8 days of it. But I mean, Ari's been a close friend. We've done a lot of projects together, and him and Cody have actually, I think they were in cribs together when they were like young. Their families were very, very close. So we've known Ari for a long time. He's such a fantastic human being, and oh man, he's so good. The scenes that we did this week, I'm actually like unbiasedly, he's just such a talented dude.
Yay! And we'll just open it up to, right before we open it up to the audience for some questions. Ava, me and you were just chatting briefly just in the lobby, and I said, you know, such a crazy production and so good, it's really intense, but like, and you said, well, we had like, I said, do you want me to tell any stories? You said, well, you know, we had a lot of fun on set, like we had a lot of fun stories, and can we get maybe one of those fun stories from anyone up here for the audience?
Okay, I don't really remember the specifics of it, but I remember, sort of, there was some kind of like creepy thing. You remember more than I did.
It was like a letter
Yeah,
or
a
photograph floated off the wall.
Yeah,
and the
so
camera was rolling.
I
in this
remember,
really
it
creepy
was,
way.
it was not like this natural way. It just kind of looked like it was like,
Yeah,
it was
floating.
so weird. But I remember being so freaked out about it. Well, that was one of them. And
Most of the time we thought the place was haunted.
Yeah, and
oh,
everybody-
it totally was.
And everybody was
100%.
I wasn't in the scene that this happened in. They're telling me this envelope
Yeah.
came out of this thing on the wall and started floating.
It was
down.
like tucked in perfectly
And I'm like,
on the
okay.
wall. How would it,
And I'm like, okay, but, you know, sure, okay. But I wasn't there, right? I wasn't there for that scene. That was her scene. And then I'm shooting a scene where I'm like looking at a picture of my wife and my kid and me in my bedroom, and it's all quiet. And everyone's quiet. We're rolling, and suddenly, this envelope jumped out of this thing on the wall and floated down. And I'm like, what the fudge sickle is happening? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Like we were like in a rush, like we had time restraints and everything.
Yeah.
But it was like production stopped. Like we had to watch the footage like 40 times. Everyone had it on their phones. They were uploading it to YouTube.
It was weird, man.
It was weird.
The place was haunted. The place was
Frame
haunted.
by frame, it was strange. It was.
I will say that we got to this place, okay, and the great thing about this movie, one of the reasons we're all, you know, it was so easy to work with everybody was because, as Jess said, you know, we were all in this farmhouse. We get to this farmhouse, it is minus 35.
That's not even an exaggeration.
It's not an exaggeration. I'm not saying, oh, it's minus 35 like Canada. No, it was minus 35. And it was windy. It was unbelievably cold. And we were in this house, and they had a heating thing, but really the only real warmth in this place was this wood stove. You know, like wood stoves in the kitchen? It was a real wood stove in the kitchen. So we're all hanging around the wood stove in the kitchen, hoping we're not going to be one who's called for next. You know, you need me in this scene? Yeah, Aiden, you have all the lines in this scene. But we're all like, as soon as you'd finish, they'd say, okay, cut, new setup, people would run to this fire. Remember that? Like the crew members, everyone is the communal fire, the big, beautiful. It was beautiful. Man.
Yeah.
I also remember that the power would go out a lot because it was so windy. And I remember we had a pretty early call time one day, and we were like all freezing cold and really tired. And I remember I was going into like makeup, and I was ready to get processed, and like I go in, and the makeup artist she was like in this like parka in the dark, and I was like, where are you? I'm like, I don't know where you are right now. She's like, oh, I'm here. And then she was like in the corner, and I was like, I can't see you. And I remember it would go on and off and on and off, and then it would be like, it's gonna get cold in here, and it's gonna go really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, we decided that we wanted to actually shoot on a location opposed to building a set for this one. Just because it would be like so isolated and so cold. We had so many exteriors of the house, so many interiors. So we went up to this house and it was like a tomb. It was like, it wasn't an abandoned house, but they used it in the summer, but not in the winter. And when we went up there, we had these industrial heaters that we brought out and like basically giant furnaces and with tubes all through the house. And as we heated up the house, you could hear it like making noises as it like de-thawed. Like it was a tomb.
Yeah, all the flies, like there's a million flies that were dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were just hibernating for
They
the
woke them up
summer.
with the heat, there's something, there was a million flies.
But we, yeah, I remember the first day. It was actually before you guys got there. It was minus 42, and our washrooms and everything froze. And we called all the places, and they're like, "No, once it gets this cold, we just close down in Aurelia, you know? Like no one helps anyone, you know? You should just go home and cancel your shooting. It's like nothing happens when it's this cold." And we're like, "Oh my god." Anyways, we're shooting a set for the new one.
And that's a true story because I usually, like I said, like I've known this guy for the better part of 2 decades, and like I usually always text him before, like the first day of shooting, or I text Cody if he's directing and say, "Hey, good luck with the shoot today, man. Good luck." And I talk to him the next day, usually about something else, and I say, "How's the first day of shooting go? Like, I mean, how's everything going?" And Chad goes, and you guys will know this because you've worked with him, but for the audience, Chad has this. He has this thing where he kind of makes like the biggest deal in the world sound like it's like, oh, you know. So he goes, he's like, "How's it going, man? Like, how was the first day of shooting? Like, is it?" And he goes, "Well, you know, it's the coldest day in history in Aurelia." So he goes, "I think it's like," I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, it's like minus 43." So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So when I saw the finished film, I was just like, wow, that's amazing. So, fantastic film. You guys probably have some questions, so let's open it up to the audience. Who wants to know something about I'll Take Your Dad? Anybody? Somebody wants. Yes. Yusuf.
Was there any times where you went off script and you ad-libbed? Or was it pretty much all scripted and you kept to the script?
I think that there were like some parts, I think.
There were some parts, I think, but mostly we kind of like stayed to it, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, we were pretty on top of that, but we did kind of like jump around with that.
Just the tiniest bit, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it was
Because
all
the
in the
writing was
script.
so
The writing was
good.
really,
It was
really
all
great.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like when you're shooting, you're going get down or get over there or whatever.
Yeah. You add a couple more goes
Yeah.
or a couple
Go,
more.
go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, but not. Yeah. The script was really like incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys have never gone through this in your personal lives. How did you make your characters? How did you form the emotion and figure out like how you can relate to this character?
Well, I mean, my character, I can only talk about my character because that's the one I played. My character is mostly just a guy that's trying to get by and that's under a threatening situation and does the best he can. I mean, these are just basically human beings. They're not superhumans just because they're dealing with super unusual circumstances. These are all circumstances that can be juxtaposed to something else, some other trouble that you might have had in your life, you know, maybe. So it's just for me, it's just playing another human being in an unusual or extraordinary, difficult circumstance, and trying to manage that. I don't know what it's like for. I don't know if you've ever been held hostage.
Actually, I have.
What?
I just made that connection right now in this moment. I'm not going to go there, but honestly, I watched a lot of documentaries on female gang members because there's a lot. It's a story that you never see told, really. We see a lot of male gang members, but there's so many nuances with being a female and overcompensating for your toughness. You have to be even tougher than the dudes. I found it so fascinating. And yeah, like Aiden said, I mean, what do you do when you're being held against your will? I would totally try to manipulate the little girl to get me out, be sweet, like do everything I can. You just go into survival instinct, and so that was pretty much me. How about you?
Well, learning from Jess and Aiden, I kind of grew into my character. I mean, as well as reading the script and stuff and just going over it. But most of the crazy, emotional, kind of like the climax of the movie, it kind of came later on in the shooting process. So by the time that we were wrapping, we were actually, like, the last day was William's death scene. So I was just, like, I've been with these people for probably a month and a half straight, basically. So it was kind of hard to even, like, just say goodbye to these characters, I would say. So it was just very difficult, and the timing was just perfect for that. So, yeah.
Did you feel like on your last day you were like, okay, I have this character, now let's do this for the next little while, because you felt like you were like, you knew it now. You knew who you were, you knew who they were, you knew how to
100%.
react.
Yeah, I was thinking about how I was going to do this and, like, how I was going to get into it. And, just, like, when they rolled the cameras, it just, like, came down. I was like, this is sad.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's almost kind of like, as an audience member, this storyline is so sad. And just seeing, like, I don't want to, leave without my dad is just really kind of heartbreaking. So that just kind of came to me right then and there. So, especially for Gloria as well.
Thank you.
So there'll be a sequel then in El Paso?
That'd be cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Just in the back there? Yeah.
I love how at the end you made no judgment of who she said goodbye to from the dead. That was really lovely. Can you speak something towards that? How the bad guy was there with the dad, who was there.
Yeah, that was
nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of the ghost stuff. Like, it was strange because it was like, it's such a. Even when we were working on the script, we would always talk about, like, is this gonna work? Like, we wanted to have this idea that these ghosts were there because, their remains were there and whatnot, but they were like, they still had kind of gang mentality where they'd be like, okay, we can screw with these people in this house, but, like, there are people. So if you come into our house, now you're screwing with our people.
Yeah.
And it's like, that idea where it's like, gangs, they often beat up and bully each other, but if anyone screws with them, then everyone goes after them,
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I mean, it's, and we wanted something where it's like, ghosts are always like, they're always mean and they're always scary and, like, it's always something, where it's either like a loved one who's so tight and connected with you, or it's like, something so terrifying. It's like, we wanted to do something different. So we were like, what if these ghosts are, they're like normal people, like, some of them are scary because they're just mean people, and some of them are, connect with people because, they're kids, and, they in the afterlife still have the same minds that they have in real life.
The ending was almost like she didn't judge anyone, like her. She had the same kind of love for her father, but the attachment.
But that's really it. It's like she doesn't know any of these people, and she can see that they've gone through some hard time, and the people that she could connect with, she connected with. So yeah, like, as she's leaving, it's like she's saying goodbye to not only her dad, but she's made friends over the years, and it's like we touched on a couple of them. But in the original idea, it's like she was actually friends with more of them. But, for sake of time and to make it nice and simple, we slowed it down.
We just had a question, you next, but there's a lady who's been waiting patiently.
Hello. First of all, I like your name because that's my name, so yes. And secondly, I think I'd like to recommend or commend everybody for the job well done. And most importantly, in such a male-dominated film, it was beautiful to see that very, what's the word I'm looking for? English is not my first language. The very tender moment between Eva and Jess, that little girl moment there, and oh my God, and of course Aiden, That moment in the bathroom was priceless. It is priceless. And I could see every male in here having such a moment in their life. If at all it ever happens to you, it's never a lot of fun, but you did wonderful. So it was very beautiful to see that tender moment, and you played it really well. So I commend you. What was that like for you? Just in case. Sorry. What was that experience for you? Because you're tired, of course, and you've got a bloody gun with a child. So what was that like
That
for you?
scene?
Yes.
It's funny, that scene was a huge part of why I wanted to do this film, actually. Again, something you never see, ever.
Yeah.
And I even talked to Chad about it, and I was like, yo, it was like written slightly a little bit different, and I was like, for real, this is how it would go down, or whatever. And you were so cool about that and accommodating. So it just, I mean, I don't know, just being a woman, you know. I would be it's like not really acting, you know, what happens in those moments. It's real, there's a real connection happening, for sure.
I was gonna ask the director, how did you have something in mind? What, like, people in mind in your imagination when you were casting? Because you cast so well, like, throughout, didn't you find? Did you have, or they came into the room and you knew, or you saw their work and you knew, or how?
Ava was the only one that actually came in and auditioned. Everyone else we kind of like tracked down through previous work that they've done.
I just was out of the country. I sent a tape.
Yeah, you sent a tape. But we did, like, I found some of the stuff that you had done before, and I was like, this girl, she's amazing. But yeah, we auditioned a ton of little girls for Gloria, and when Ava came in, it was like a no-brainer for us. Like, she came in, and the audition was actually the scene where she says,
Is the toothbrush?
yeah, it's like,
right?
don't use my toothbrush. It's a pink one.
Yeah.
Ever.
And it was so good that it's like when you're doing auditions, you're always kind of sitting there and you're trying to be like straight face and you don't want to like interrupt or whatever. But I remember actually laughing out loud like during it. And when she left, we were all like, oh man, I hope she's available like, during the dates that we have and whatnot. And luckily we were, and she came on set and blew us away every day. I remember there's the one scene when she's looking at the door and we're pushing in on her. And it's this nice scene where it's like she's looking at this door and she's like terrified to go in. It's like her dad's door to his like butcher room, and she's never gone in there before by herself. But there's this whole thing with Jess, and she's going through this really emotional time in her life with all these questions. And we did this push on her. It was beautiful. And then she was like, "Do you want me to cry? Could I like do a tear or something?" I was like, I want to ask Aiden or Jess to do that. I was like, I mean, sure, if you want to. And she was like, okay, cool. I was like, do you need a minute? She said, no, I'm good. We literally pushed in. It was like single tear down. We were like, oh man. And I remember I was like, out of focus. You can do it again? She said, no problem. So like 3 times, every time, like perfectly timed tear. So, I mean, after that, I was like, oh man.
We had a question? Yeah, thanks for that.
It's just one quick question. As the writer in the plot line, was it intentional to make a connection between a menstruating young woman and the death of her father?
Not really. It's funny because the actual treatment didn't have that in it. The first initial treatment, that was something that the writer had kind of evolved into, and I think it was something that was initially just because, it's hard being a father and raising a little girl, especially like small town country mentality, where it's like, it's not, William kind of keeps to himself, he does whatever he does, but there's something like, a menstruating young girl that would be like, whoa, no, this is out of my realm.
I ask that because I'm a single father.
Yeah.
I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I related to that. I think I die when she finally does.
And then you actually died.
Well, you'd actually die. To her, you might die. There's a whole transition of life. I mean, some needs to die for something to grow, and I
But that's really-
I thought there was an underlying message in the whole film that may have been intended by the writers. It's very pretty.
But that, yeah, no, that was something that we did just, because it really is, it's like something that Gloria and and Jackie could really connect with in a way that would be difficult with her own father, you know? It's very hard to, in a 85-minute movie, to create a connection between a trapped woman on a bed and a little girl who's like, grown up with her father, seeing some pretty horrific stuff, and really kind of creating something that's believable and, that has some heart to it. And also something that, a girl from the streets would be tied up to a bed trying to get out and like fighting for her life, like to get her to turn from a hostage to someone who actually cares about the family. It's like it takes some pretty extreme stuff and some sympathy between characters to really make it work. So
Awesome answer. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got questions in the back. I really liked the film. Found it funny, serious, and scary. One of the reviewers talked about it being a mishmash of George Romero's Night of the Living Dead and I can never remember his first name, Woods' Planet 9. Except both of those films were based on horror or science fiction. When I watch your film and think about it, it could have been made without the horror part. Although the horror part was the most emotionally effective to me, the story itself, I feel, could have been a stand on its own story, movie. So I'm wondering, as you thought about this, was it from the beginning a horror movie, or was it a story about good guys and bad guys, good women and bad women, that somehow developed this other limb that happened to be horror?
yeah, I mean, that's a compliment to us for sure. We create a ton of content. We've been doing a ton of films over the last couple of years with Breakthrough Entertainment. We're just going into our 10th film with them in 3 or 4 years. And me and Cody create the majority of the content. And what we always say is, if you're going to do a horror movie, you should be able to take away all the horror from it and still have a story. When it turns into a horror movie that's made for the horror of it, that's just not, it's something that we don't like those movies as much as we like movies that you care about, There should be a drama, there should be a story, there should be something where it's like, if you wipe away all the blood and gore and scares and all that stuff, you still have something at the core of it that is an emotional story that, people would connect with. So, yeah, again, it's like the initial idea did kind of come from that, but a lot of our ideas do stem from that. We like to come up with a story that has characters and their relations together, and something that you would watch normally, and we kind of do our twist of horror to kind of blend into that.
Okay, so let's hear it again for these fantastic, the absolutely fantastic cast.